Good afternoon and welcome to this session about content management systems, and more specifically the use of content management systems for blogging, for running a weblog. And I will compare the three following systems: WordPress, Drupal and Nucleus. Why these three? Well, it's very simple. These are the three I know best, or in fact, the only three I know. And I've used them in a number of projects. So I have put here the names of some blogs. Some of them have been made by other people. These are in red. For example, Gent Blogt, the city blog of Gent, thesedays.be. Some blogs I have made, itv.be, taalrespect.be. For Drupal, the Brussels Journal is maybe one of the best known, but also the VRT, the Belgian, Flemish television, radio and television service, have made a portal site for young people, 16plus.be, also made with Drupal, and you find some other URLs as well. And Nucleus, my personal weblog, lvb.net, is made with Nucleus, and another one I made is iradio.be. Struikgewas.be was also made with Nucleus, but it is offline since a few weeks. What these systems have in common, well, you know this probably already. They are standalone CMS blog systems. In contrast with, for example, hosted services like typepad.com and blogger.com, so we won't talk about these. They are based on PHP, they run with the MySQL database system, they are free, it's open source, there are active support forums, so if you have questions or problems, you can look at the documentation online, but you can also ask questions in the forum. They are developed in a modular and object-oriented way, which makes it easy to extend the functionality through an API with your own plugin, a plugin that you program yourself, or through the use of plugins that other persons have developed. Some systems call it plugins, others call it modules, but what's in the name? So let's start with a short presentation of WordPress. It is probably the most frequently used blog system in the world at this time. I don't have an exact number, but there are certainly hundreds of thousands of blogs running on WordPress. The founder is Matt Mullenweg from Houston, Texas. He wrote the system in 2003. And we are now running version 2.0.2. I have put the version number here so that if I compare some features of these blog systems, that you know which version I have used for the features. The second one is Drupal, and the founder of Drupal, Dries Buitaert, is here, is present here in the room. He has programmed the core, the early core of Drupal in 2001, and I think 2 weeks ago version 4.7 has been released. In fact, Drupal is not a pure blog system, it is a full-blown CMS, content management system, but it can of course be used, and it is used frequently to run blogs. It's very community oriented. There are a lot of features like forums and things like that that make it very suitable for running a real community. I've asked Dries earlier today his estimation for the number of blogs or sites currently running Drupal, and he thinks it's around 75,000. Oh, it's also important to tell you that apart from Drupal, you have also Civic Space, and Civic Space is in fact a special version of Drupal packaged with a number of frequently used plugins and with an installation script. So it makes it easier to install the whole thing, and you can make a site up and running in less time than if you install Drupal with while installing all the plugins separately. And then we have Nucleus. Nucleus is also a Belgian system developed by Wouter de Munk, living in the neighborhood of Tielt in West Vlaanderen. And he has developed that in 2002. We are now running version 3.2. Nucleus is a smaller CMS system, a smaller blog software system, and the estimation goes from a few hundred to maybe 1,000 or 2,000 blogs that are running it. So the purpose of this presentation is to compare these three systems, but if we compare things, of course we have to take into account who are we talking about, for what kind of people are we making the comparison. And I think we can distinguish a certain number of groups of people for which several different kinds of criteria are relevant. First of all, we have the beginning blogger, and what is important for a beginning blogger? He wants to install the software, do a minimum of configurations, choose between a few options for configuring the system, and then he wants to be up and running and start blogging. And up and running and blogging, what do we mean by that? Well, writing content, preferably also tagging the content. Tagging is a concept that has become very popular in the last year and a half. And he wants other users to be able to comment, to put comments on the content. And maybe he wants other bloggers to track back, to send trackbacks to the post. So I think these are the most commonly used features, and maybe trackback was considered a more advanced feature 2 years ago, but nowadays it's considered to be very common, so we have to take into account also the trackback system for the beginning user. And then once you have a blog and you want to develop your blog further and maybe adapt it to certain requirements, well, what are the intermediate things you want to do? Well, you want to tweak the layout, and you also want to create sections. And to explain what I mean by that, I will show you my personal weblog. My personal weblog consists of a number of different sections. For example, if you arrive on the home page, you have all the English articles. But I also have a Dutch section here. So I have a number of tabs here, and I call these, in fact, the sections of my blog. And each section has a number of specific characteristics. For example, here, this section, not only are the articles in Dutch, but also the user interface, the menu options are also in Dutch. For example, there is archief, whereas in the English section there is archive. And you also see that the banners and the commercials on my weblog are different depending on the language and the section that you use. So to be able to implement that, I have to be able to create sections and to attach different templates to each section. So I consider that, in fact, a requirement for an intermediate blogger, or a blogger with intermediate requirements. You also want to install plugins. You can extend the functionality of your blog with plugins, and we will see how these plugins are used, how they can be configured, and how difficult or how easy that is for these three blog systems. And then we have the advanced use of blog software. And what do I mean by that? Well, for example, creating a real community where each user can register, and with the registration comes a number of rights. For example, a registered user can send mail, can send messages directly to an author or to another user. You also have to take into account the performance of the blog. One of the blogs that I have, that was in the list of URLs I showed you in the beginning, had 2 million page views in the month of February. So if you have 2 million page views in a month, you have to make the system performant, for example through the use of caching. Sometimes you want to modify the source code, it's sometimes necessary, and sometimes you want to develop your own plugins. So let's start with what is important for the beginning blogger. And the question we should ask is, what can I do without installing plugins? So we will look at the functionality of the blog system as it comes, without the need to install additional plugins. So what do I consider to be important? Well, first of all, install. I want a web-based install script. So I don't want to meddle with shell access and running shell scripts and things like that. I don't want to have to log into MySQL to create a database myself through entering commands. No, I want to do the whole installation process with a web-based install script, and the database itself should also be created through that install script. Well, then we see that in WordPress and in Nucleus this is available. In Drupal it is not. In Civic Spaces, there it is available. So as you see in the table, I have put a 1 and a 0. I have not worked with yes or no, just to be able to have at the bottom line the score, which totals in fact the number of positive hits for each criterion. Then after the installation we have the configuration. Well, of course we want the whole configuration process to be done through a web interface, and all the three systems have that feature. So that's no problem at all. And then we want the blog posts. To be available with clean URLs. What do I mean with clean URLs? URLs without any question mark or ampersand in them. So for example, in my blog, when I click on the detail for one of these blog posts, we see that the URL is lvb.net/item/ and then a number. That's a clean URL. If I take another blog that is made with Nucleus, with the same software, but one that is not configured to use clean URLs, I think you will see that the detail here, the detail page of each blog post has a question mark in it. So that's not considered to be a clean URL. They all have it, but it's a question of configuration. Another thing is human readable URLs. What is that? Well, my blog doesn't work with human readable URLs. Why not? Because in fact the URL has a number in it, and a number doesn't say what the blog is about. If you look at some other blogs, for example, I go to a blog or a site that is made with Nucleus, but where clean URLs are implemented through the use of a plugin, then you see that instead of a number, we have a human readable part of the URL. In WordPress, for example, this is default. In Nucleus, it's not. And in Drupal, you can enable it through a configuration option that comes with the system. And then once we have installed and configured the blog system, we want to be able to use it and to start publishing. What do I consider to be important requirements for blogging and for publishing? I want to be able to upload and insert images into my blog posts without having to install additional plugins or modules. And I want to do it directly from within the edit window. For example, I go to the administration interface of my blog, I choose post a new message, I can immediately click the image button, I choose upload, and then I go to a directory where there are some least one image, for example this one. I upload it. I see the dimensions, I select it, I can add alternative text, and then it is inserted into the post. This is not a WYSIWYG interface, it's just insertion of code, and as you see, it's not HTML code, it's some kind of symbolic code that is inserted. I also can format this image, for example, by aligning it to the right side or by aligning it to the left side of the blog post. So that's what I mean by uploading and inserting images, which is possible in WordPress and Nucleus as they come. Of course, in Drupal it's also possible, but you have to install a certain plugin. Aligning images to the left side or to the right side can also be done in Nucleus, but not in Drupal and not in WordPress, unless you develop your own style sheet and maybe you work on plugins, or you install an existing plugin. In Drupal it's even so that in the default edit window, as it comes, you cannot insert links. You have to type in the HTML code, href is, and so on. Then comments. Well, of course, all these three systems have the commenting functionality built into the system as it comes. Tagging. Well, in the newest version of Drupal, tagging is built into the system. And with tagging, I mean free tagging. You can create your own new tags on the fly. You don't have to define them as categories, for example, beforehand. None of the systems come with trackback functionality included in the core system as it comes. And none of them comes with comment spam filters or trackback spam filters, which is, as you probably know, nowadays a necessity. When you start a blog and you don't implement one of these spam filters, your blog, even if it has only a few, maybe 10 or 20 visitors per day, it will be flooded with comment spam in a few weeks. And then we come to the requirements for the intermediate blogger. Oh, maybe we should look at the bottom line here. Of course, these scores are not weighted. There's no weight, there's no relative importance attached to each of these criteria. So you should, the importance or the value of these scores are rather relative. But I think we can conclude that for a beginning user, WordPress and Nucleus are rather well suited, whereas Drupal is more for the advanced user. What about the intermediate requirements? Well, there are a number of things that have to do with the layout. For example, you can make a distinction between a skin and a template. The terminology can differ, but you have the formatting of the page, which has more to do with defining zones on the page, defining graphic enhancements. And on the other hand, you have the structure, the content-wise structure of a blog post. For example, what kind of format do you want the date to have? Where do you put the number of comments? Do you want to put it on top or at the bottom, and things like that? That's what I call a template. All three of them make the distinction between these two kinds of formatting options. In WordPress and in Nucleus, you can edit your skins and your templates. How many?
Ik denk dat we nog een minuut of 3 hebben.
Okay, so let's go quickly over it. In WordPress and Nucleus, you can edit them through a web interface. In Drupal, you have to edit the file, which can also be of importance for intermediate users. One of the things I find important is if you have different templates for your blog, for example, like I have an English language template and a Dutch language template, to what kind of basic element can you attach the template? Can you choose that on an article by article basis? Do you have to choose it on a user per user basis? Or things like that. For example, in WordPress you can attach, or you can choose the template on an article by article basis or on a category basis. Whereas in Drupal you have to choose it for an author or for a specific path, for a specific URL path, for example a subdirectory. And then we have the advanced features. For example, maybe you want one installation, one site where all the users have their own specific blog. That's possible in Drupal. That's a multi-blog system. You can have one blog per user. You can even have several domains, several sites in one Drupal installation. So you don't have to reinstall the software for each blog you have on a specific server. Okay, I will make this presentation available on my blog, and it will also be on the Barcamp site, so I won't go over all the criteria because of a lack of time. But the conclusion is clearly that for the beginning user, Nucleus and WordPress are more suited. For the intermediate user, it depends from what you find important. If you find the layout flexibility important, maybe then Nucleus is more suited for you. If you want things like comment moderation and things like that, then maybe WordPress is better suited. And for the more advanced sites, community portals, then clearly Drupal is the better choice. There are some other strong points and weak points from these systems. For example, in Nucleus, you don't have to use any PHP when customizing the blog. You can just manipulate some symbolic annotations through a web interface. That can be a good thing. Some people, especially if they know PHP, will find that a disadvantage, because of course PHP itself is a much more stronger language than that symbolic language of Nucleus. And then the weak points, personally, what I find rather annoying in WordPress is that the information about WordPress and the plugins and things like that are spread out over a lot of maybe 3 or 5 different sites. You have to know what the most interesting sites about WordPress are. Whereas in Drupal and in Nucleus you have clearly one portal site with a community forum and all the information is there. Any questions?
Is there a reason waarom dat je die 3 uitgekozen hebt?
Well, as I said in the beginning, but maybe you didn't arrive yet, these are the 3 systems I have used for a number of sites I have built. So I know the functionality. Maybe, for example, for Drupal, for example, I've just used the newest version for a few days, but I know what is new in the new version, so I have already incorporated that in my comparison. But of course there are others like Joomla, but I've not used them, so I cannot say anything about it.
The website with 2 million visitors.
That was the Brussels Journal, because in the month of February they published or they republished the Danish cartoons, and people from all over the world came looking at those cartoons, and the server had at that time to be able to keep it.
It could deliver.
Yes, yes. And it gave us a good opportunity to tweak and to tune the server and to tune the Drupal system, and to test out several options to see what gave the best results. Okay, thank you.